Okay. Okay, welcome to the Infinite Imaginarium, everybody. I just wanted to sort of start for today's show talking about the human genome and how that may be able to be something that we can evolve as humans evolve, if that makes sense. So, you know, firstly, I wanted to say that the kind of the general understanding of the genome is it's kind of in a sense, dare I say, a recipe for the creation of a human, or, you know, not just a human, a live organism or anything that's alive. So it can be a plant or an animal or anything. And also, you know, how I've come to understand it, it's something that connects us all. So, you know, to some extent, we can all, you know, we could be connected to other plants. You know, humans can be connected to cauliflowers or trees or strawberries or anything like that, which sounds really weird for some people to sort of get their head around. But it means that we have, you know, the DNA structure, which is part of our individual sort of characteristics of who we are. So we sometimes have an ability to understand each other on, you know, a more connective level, and other times we can understand each other on other levels too. But you know, I just wanted to sort of start off by talking about that, and you know, how we understand, you know, our own individual abilities, and, you know, how we connect with other people also. So I wanted to also talk with Tech Lords about that. He's sort of been on our shows in the past, and he's got some really interesting things to say about how we run certain programs, you know, how we, in terms of how we behave and how we are in our lives, but also, you know, how we connect on a much deeper level. So, Tech Lords, do you have something to say about that, or would you like to comment on that? Tech Lords there, or have we lost him?
I think he's having some technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
It was just static.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean,
oh, there he is.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to go in settings, and I have been on here for a while, and I have a a new microphone, the condenser mic, so I had to change that setting. So yeah, it was interesting. Your intro was really interesting. As far as programming goes, any soul that incarnates on this planet must have one kind of program or another, either astrological or cosmic. Astrological is basically a repeat of an experience on the planet, so meaning it's a reincarnation. But for those who have a cosmic programming, It's a first incarnation, and there's no karmic ties to family members where that soul is born. So that's a very uh, different, you know, approach to this programming. But basically, any soul that incarnates here must have a program. It's a cosmic law. You cannot incarnate without some sort of program. Um, so I would start with this statement, and I'll go deeper as we explore uh, further on in this show.
Yeah, so my kind of understanding is that there's two kind of schools of thought in the understanding of what the genome is. I'll say genome because you've obviously got the human genome, which, you know, in a kind of a third dimensional sense, people understand it on a very kind of basic scientific level, that it is kind of the individual blueprint of a person in terms of what, you know, their skin color is, or their level of intelligence, what their facial characteristics are. It can also mean whether they are um, going to have certain uh, illnesses in the future, you know, like whether you're going to have cancer, or whether you're going to have, you know, you might be one of those people that is, you know, extra, um, you know, you've got, you're kind of an extra bendy person, so you're one of those people who's like double jointed, so you might have like that thing where you can dislocate your arm, whereas somebody else wouldn't be able to do it. So it's all part of the kind of blueprint within the DNA, you know, like a recipe really, that makes you the individual that you are. But then on a more deeper level, the way I see it is, you have the Akashic record, which is like the overall Akashic record of like every uh, individual soul's experience today. Then you have an individual human Akash on an individual level, which is basically every experience, every previous lifetime and experience that you've ever had, recorded within your DNA, which is the genome. Um, and then we, you know, in terms of the third dimensional reality that we live on, or planet Earth, if you like, we're all connected in that every living organism has their own individual genome. So somewhere along the line, um, we share ancestry with all living organisms. So whether it's an animal, a plant, organism, you know, everything basically in that respect. And also, I think we can evolve um, the genome. You know, we can create the genome if we have conscious awareness. And personally, I feel that conscious awareness is a lot of the DNA that is often referred to as junk DNA. So there's a, you know, I'm not sure of the exact statistical numbers um, in terms of research of how much it is, but I believe that it may be 90% of the DNA that it is referred to as junk, that apparently does nothing, is actually quantum. So in that respect, if you're conscious, um, then you have an awareness. You can then activate the dormant DNA, which then means you can become a creator of your existence. you can sort of be consciously aware of the DNA or the library or the record, and you can change things, you can alter things, you know, you can be fully connected in that sense, and you can understand how it works. But obviously there is a portion of beings or people that don't have that much awareness, or they're not aware of their, you know, dormant DNA. And then obviously if you go deeper into it, it kind of boils down to the ego, you know, where vibrationally, if you are existing in a kind of survival mode of sort of fight or flight, you know, everything's very much about survival, you know, eating, sleeping, procreation, and just existing to be alive, just doing the you know, the bare minimum so you can survive. A lot of that on a vibrational level is fear-based, which is partly to do with the level of consciousness of an individual soul or an individual being. And then it also kind of perpetuates on the basis that you have the things that happen, or, you know, that we perceive within the third dimensional realm or third density. And then we feel that we are, you know, we the things that are sort of put before us, if you like, are making us feel as though we have to do extra things to survive, or we feel that, you know, it's all kind of fear-based. It's like, well, you know, if I do this, then what if that happens, or what if people view me in that way, or, you know, if I say this or if I do this, then this might happen. So it all kind of boils down to fear of what people might think of you if you say a certain thing, or fear of losing your job, or fear of losing your social standing or status. And all those fear-based things keep us in a low vibrational state, which is the same thing as the ego. It's all about feeling as though if I do such and such, this might happen. Or, you know, that thing about,
Nikki?
yeah,
I kind of wanted to jump in here.
yeah,
So kind of going back to what you were saying about the junk DNA, and also too about life and the genome and stuff. So it's 97% of what initially they call junk DNA that apparently has no function. But so I was kind of doing some research and rereading this book, and it's on the quantum level. All life forms are essentially the same as rocks or anything like that. We're all made up of atoms and made up of the same materials, obeying the same laws of physics. So what sets us apart from like living things from materials and non-organic things? And this is something that we've been pondering since our existence, since we've been able to think. And you know, what is the nature of a living thing? So there's a really good quote by Dylan Thomas, and it says, "What is the force? The force that through the green fuse drives the flower." So what is that? And we labeled it as soul or consciousness throughout our history. We're always been, what's that spark that gives us life? And Aristotle's argument is that all living organisms possess an internal will that allows them to initiate and perform actions such as growth, regeneration, procreation, and movement. So it's a sense of agency that all living things have. And even there's been really good research with plants when they hook them up to EKG machine, and they notice that they register stress. Like there's this famous study where they had two plants in two plants, and they're registering, seeing if they could pick up on anything. And a guy goes in there and rips out one of the plants and throws it on on the ground and basically kills it and walks out the room, and the plant is kind of like registering that it's like it's very active, is like getting tense, and then they leave and it kind of like relaxes, and that same person walks into the room and the plant tenses up again, getting ready to see if like maybe he's going to attack him or whatever. So they have a sense of the environment, they have a sense of agency, which is really interesting because, you know, in the normal way of, especially how our culture is, that we don't see plants. I mean, the weird thing that we view plants, we kind of know they're living, but we take it for granted that, you know, oh, they don't know what's going on. They just are like these autonomous machines that just kind of grow and they function like a robot. But they do have a sense of agency. Aristotle also says that the soul creates movement. And so this is really interesting as far as what is life, and what you were going to about the DNA and how we're all connected through this kind of evolving of life forms out of the primordial soup. But the really interesting thing is, I read this book a long time ago and I always kind of go back to it. It's called The Cosmic Serpent. And in it, they talk about the scientist, biologist goes to the Amazon and he wants to research plants, the kind of like the indigenous people's knowledge of plants and how do they get that. And so he goes to the shaman. The shaman says, well, the plants tell me what plants to use for different diseases and this and that. They talk to me. And he kind of first thought it was a joke, but the shaman was dead serious. And he says, well, you know, the only way to learn this is to experience it. So you got to take ayahuasca and the plants will teach you. And so he takes ayahuasca and he has like this crazy trip, and he noticed that these archetypes keep on popping up of the cosmic serpent, of ladders, of these same kind of things going over and over again. And he later, when he went back, he showed a molecular biologist the paintings of some of the shamans, and he's like, oh man, those are triple helixes. That's DNA from afar. It looks like a telephone cord. It looks like the chromosomes are specific phases, and they're spreading out from the DNA, and this and that of the different things that they're capturing there. So, in a sense, that during the visual journey in ayahuasca, that they're tapping in to, let's say, the junk DNA, or this thread of this. There's other terms for it, the Akashic field, like you were mentioning, or the morphogenetic field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about. And so we really need to kind of, I think where we're at is where we're expanding our idea of how information works, and even how reality is and life is. And real quick, to sum this up, because we're talking about the junk DNA, there's this really good part in the book where he was studying the DNA, and he noticed about, you know, what we don't know 90% of what's in DNA. Like, we just think it's nothing. He's like, that can't be true. Like, nature is very efficient on the way it works. So there was this Russian computer scientist that made this algorithm for, I think, no, he was a linguist, and made this kind of algorithm to identify languages, and it worked very well. Like, you know, ancient Sumerian, like First Dynasty, Chinese, and all these different languages, and they have this certain ratio of them in their structure, and so he had this like golden ratio, and I think it was like 3-to-1 of things getting repeated, you know, like the most common, like vowels or whatever. And so like it works in this real language, has this real mathematical formula to it, and the guy figured it out. So he applied that algorithm to the junk DNA, and it read out that it was a language. Because if it was totally random and not a language or had contained information, then it wouldn't follow that ratio of language that linguists figured out. And so the junk DNA has a massive amount of information in it. This is just nothing cosmic about it, but just the actual nuts and bolts of it. And it's so efficient how DNA records information. So it's just interesting how when we're able to do kind of, me and Kevin are always on this kick of science and non-duality, blending the both ancient knowledge with what we're learning now, that it gives us this whole complex picture of the world and reality. And it's just amazing, that experience of and it doesn't even have to do with like reading. Like, I mean, you could go and if you prime yourself in a certain way, do some breathing exercises, meditate, study your dreams or whatever, and you could get in touch with it. You can have an actual like physical experience. And I have shared this one time. I fasted underneath the tree, and I had this weird, crazy experience of a typical outer body experience. You go to the white light, blah blah blah, and then I would say like a month later, I had this other experience, and it was typical of the Egyptian myth of dying. I was like on this ship, and we were rowing, and I even had like the Egyptian gods there, and it was weird. It was really weird. And from there, because I read like Joseph Campbell and different things, and I was trying to make sense of it because it was really hard to integrate that kind of like knowledge. And like what Techler's was saying, and we use these, whether you use the term archetype, programs, or whatever, and because I took computer science when I was in high school, so I was like, oh man, those two things that I was just accessing embedded programs, and they were playing out. They're playing out to the modern death experience, and then I accessed an old Egyptian program, and they played out perfectly. And I was just like, this is weird. And so I kind of always had, since that experience, this non-dualistic way of looking at things, using different lenses, and that just for me personally has worked out. And not that I understand everything or anything like that, but I'm always curious and always asking questions. And I kind of just, that was my little spiel that I wanted to prime, and I'll throw it back to Nikki.
Yeah. I wanted to ask Tech Lords, actually, because I know this is something that we've talked about in the past. And I think you touched on it a little bit a moment ago when you were chatting about how you have the astrological program, and you have, so in a sense, you have a being that maybe comes here or incarnates here that has never been here before. So technically they have no record within their individual Akash. So they come in almost like a fresh slate. They don't have any karma. And then you have somebody who has incarnated before. They're still working through programs, and perhaps they have things that they still want to experience. So they may then leave one existence and then incarnate into another existence and repeat a program. Hence the wheel of reincarnation, or being trapped on the wheel of reincarnation. So my question is, somebody that has evolved to the point of being very aware and conscious, but they have had many existences, and then you have someone who comes in it with a completely clean slate, as in, or they've never been within, or they've never existed on third density realm. What are the differences between those two things, or those two beings, souls, if you like, if that makes sense, that question? the tech
right.
lords. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay, before I answer that question, I just want to mention that our DNA or genome, whatever you want to call it, contains the programming. So all the program, either astrological or cosmic, is embedded in our genome, in our DNA. The soul, however, records. It's like a USB connected to a computer. It records everything, uh, every experience. And once the life is over, these uh, experiences, all the files, are transferred to the records, the Akashic records, for examination and then preparation for a future lifetime. Uh, Now, the difference between uh, an incarnated soul for the first time, which, who has a cosmic programming, and a soul that reincarnates, which means that soul had experiences in the past in the third density, either here or on other planets, because uh, there's a lot of planets where humans can evolve. But here, um, the main difference is in the program. Um, the There is no karmic ties for, let's say, a star kid, uh, first time incarnate on this planet. There's no karmic ties to the family, so that kid will seem a bit strange, very intelligent, highly intelligent, uh, very high level of intelligence, and when that kid goes to school, he's bored. So that's, some of the people will say, oh, he's got ADHD or whatever. On the other hand, you have the soul that has many lifetimes under his belt, and he's coming here to continue the learning um, experiment, because it is an experiment. The whole planet is an experiment. It's a big, big school for souls. If we, as a soul, reach a certain level of experiments or experience, then there is a connection to our higher self or cosmic self or cosmic double, call it whatever you want. It bears many names. Um, a connection is made in a special way. And when that connection is made, another program kicks in. So that's the cosmic programming. And it collides with the astrological programming. And the role of that cosmic programming is to break the astrological programming. And this is what we call a solar initiation. And this initiation brings the ego to be totally transparent, an ego that doesn't reflect the light or the intelligence that uh, is sent via thoughts. Thoughts always originate from the cosmic self, but as a uh, if somebody's not ready for this, it will be passed through a buffer zone we call the astral zone. Um, so entities of that realm, they manipulate and those thoughts, and they try to influence us in our experience to make sure we follow the astrological programming. So this is why we're always manipulated, either from the astral realm or even the ethereal realm, where our cosmic selves are. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to hear other comments because I'm diving very deep here.
Kevin?
It's so nice to see everyone today. Thank you, Missy, and thank you, Tech, for joining us. You're beautiful, and I really, really respect you taking the time out to share your ideas with us. I really wanted to focus on my concept of our DNA expression is how incompletely utilized what lies within us, the latent capacity of our expression of self as we approach this fifth dimensional Gaia and start the ascension process, and what we might think in terms of our potential state of being in comparison with our functional state of being now, and how we were conditioned into this place of existence. And there's a technical term called DNA methylation, and it's an epigenetic mechanism that's used to control gene expression. Basically, segments or blockchain pieces can be sequestered or deactivated within the living organism in order to keep a stasis, which would not incur a growth facet. And what we're sort of in right now, if you follow any of the Pleiadian light workers or any channelers that are discussing the fact that we're resonating. You notice the planet's resonating at a different frequency now than it was. Is we're bringing online sectors in our DNA when we're allowing ourselves to harmonize with this new vibration, that are opening the doors to things that, with fear, poor food and diet, use of alcohol, heavy use of opioids, a really bad one for suppressing empathy are pain relievers. They tend to block the ability to show compassion within people, sort of keep us disconnected from our internal function. And of course, we know about the pineal gland and its release of dopamine in conjunction with activating brain centers and vibration frequency capacity increases, which help us to grow our perception and let the throughput of energy move us forward. But we have what we consider a 12,000 year history of the whole human self. That everything we can see back pretty much dates from when we had the last breakdown of the ice sheets. Sea levels rose what they estimate was a minimum of 100 feet over a period of a few months. And as you know, with human beings, we choose simplicity. So most of us lived on seashores or lakefronts or rivers, which all of those boundaries were changed and flooded and made us a great migrational species. It's my contention that over the hundreds of thousands of years prior to that, when we have proven advanced civilizations, we have the stone remnants underwater and topically on our planet that show we had a very hierarchical structure for a long time. And because they communed harmoniously within nature, it allowed them the interface on a basic level, but earthing, spending, walking barefoot on the earth and letting the energies transmute through our DNA, and therefore gave us what I consider considerably more capacity to communicate through telekinesis, to actively astral travel, to do mapping of distant lands just through the focus of meditation and being in connection on ley lines where heavy energetic forces, that's where most of the temples and things are built. They were generally places that you'd meet for specific gathering times, I think, to garner energy, to come to share the efforts of your season, and to share stories and to maintain community. And I'm sure there were many people who were interested in being in charge of those things, but because of the vast amounts of space and the low amount of population, the organization of society just simply wasn't the same. So to come that into full circle, our DNA was allowed to be activated through the harmonious presence of the vibration of our planet, and allow us to have capacities to understand the health and location of things that allowed us to really fulfill the experience of the whole living condition, and to have deep emotional feelings and safety and trust, which is what we're so steeply deprived of now. And that sort of kept our, I think, over, since empire has taken hold, it's been a systematic method of finding chemical and psychological suppressors to sort of limit our experience, to not make us introspective and searching, to keep our DNA functioning on its minimal level. And it's been an act in progress for quite some time. So as our vibration increases, as we pass into the realm where things just become more apparent for the people who are looking, I kind of believe that our DNA is in process of all of the non-functioning latent sectors to realigning their crystalline form and growing us more closely to what we were before we were convinced what we are. And I'll just hand it back over.
Yeah, I think that if I'm understanding what you're saying, Kevin, that sort of going back several thousand years, when we were kind of fully activated, back, in terms of it's kind of a bit of a strange way of describing it, because once you become fully conscious, there is no kind of linear time. But in terms of thinking back to a time, using that word time just as a form of understanding, when we were conscious, before that period of time when we became unconscious, I think some have referred to it as a schism. We're gradually working our way back to being fully conscious, but it's kind of like a several things contribute to that ever increasing level of expansion of consciousness. And obviously there's the biological side, excuse me, the physical side of the physiological side of the body, and obviously certain foods and things that we all have a vibrational frequency that contribute to, whether we stay in that kind of low level vibration or a higher level of vibration. And there's the whole issue as to whether or not eating meat is detrimental to becoming more conscious. And the only thing that I will say, I eat meat myself. I don't eat masses of meat. I'm not a massive meat eater, but I do eat meat. But I will say that, from what I've come to understand, that meat would be a lower level of vibration, because it's anything that's dead would be a low level of vibration. But to make things, sort of going even deeper into how foods affect consciousness, if you take a starseed, for example, or a being that has come into this reality that has no karma, they could technically partake in the consumption of meat, or even certain foods that have a negative vibration, in the sense that they are, like Monsanto foods, or it could be just really unhealthy things like junk food, sugars and sweets, and basically things that have no nutritional value at all. Even people that aren't even into all this kind of thing that we're talking about would understand that it has no nutritional value. They could kind of almost come into this reality with what I would call it's almost like a protective coating over the parts of the biological computer, or the biocomputer, that connects us to the non-physical realm. So, for example, the pineal gland, which connects us to the non-physical realm. There's certain beings that come into this reality that have like almost a protective coating, or like a sheath over their pineal gland. So you get, for example, light workers that come in that have had several existences in the third density realm, or within this realm, and they've gone through the learning process, and they kind of come in as, if you like, volunteers. So they kind of they've transcended everything. They've gone through all their learning, they've transcended karma. And then you have as Tech Lords was saying, the star seeds that come in that have never had a existence within the third density realm. They may come from sort of the seventh dimension. So they're kind of a starseed being. They come into this realm for certain reasons, but they have never had a human existence before. And in that sense, they could, so you could get the child that can eat certain things and do certain things, and it would never have an effect on them. But you also get, in terms of starseeds, you also get starseeds that come in and have, they would be the opposite end of the scale, where they'd be highly allergic to everything, because they have a slightly different biological makeup in terms of their lineage. So, what I'm saying is everything, there's so many different aspects to our ongoing evolvement in terms of consciousness. And there's all different individual beings that have different stories within their DNA, and they also have different lineage. And I think as a collective within this realm, it's kind of being able to understand different beings when we come into contact with them, and sort of understand their story as to how they can function, or how they're functioning, or what level they're at. And I think for a lot of people is the difficulty, is being able to understand each other and connect with each other, and sort of think, well, I think that's one of the things as well with this realm, is everything is about polarity and duality, and people sort of largely see things as black and white as well, you know, and everything has a category and a place and a position. And I think that's why we have such a big thing about having these labels within this realm, you know, of like, oh, that person's a starseed, that person's an indigo, that person's a crystal child, or that person's a vegetarian. You know, it kind of helps us to understand all these different things, different aspects. But, you know, ultimately we're all one thing and we're all connected. So,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back around, and it goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning. I think, you know, what has happened, you know, almost a majority of human existence, we have had to live as be empathetic to actually be able to read people's feelings. You know, like hunter gatherers, when you're out hunting, like a pack had to read each other, had to feel each other of how we're moving and move in unison to go and do things. And we live very locally, and we all have had this different experience of this. I know me in the kitchen, you know, we would, the more your crew is together and works together, there's no like really verbal communication. Everything kind of goes without saying. It's like a dance in the kitchen when it's really running well, and you kind of anticipate what the other person's doing, and there's this weird coordination that is automatic, that is just in doing. But going back to the food, our problem is that recently, like industrial age, we have had to really sever ourselves from life. We, like what I was saying about the plant, we view the plant as this machine. We view this plant as having no agency, and we don't respect that agency of even cows or pigs or chickens. I mean, there's a big difference between when you have a chicken that's free roaming and then a chicken that just stays in the coop. Same thing with pigs and cows. There's a big difference when you respect the agency of life versus when you have the industrialize of food, and that plays a lot into it, and also to how you prepare the food, and having that consciousness. You know, we use this term that in the kitchen, you know, what's good is because that we love it. Like, we pay attention and we give our energy into it, to every step of the process of cooking it. And that you know, you may follow the exact steps of a recipe, but there's little subtleties that happen in that. And I think that's the little subtleties too that happen when you grow your own food, or when the food is grown with someone that actually cares about the plant or even cares about the animal. And, you know, even before, almost all indigenous cultures have had, and this is where I think, you know, the start of praying before you eat, but it's actually respecting the agency of life and being connected to it, that you respect the life. And this kind of goes into this bigger point of the environment that we're in, this new program that's trying to be embedded on us, of the system, the empire, as Kevin was saying, and it kind of gives promotes this kind of being a psychopath. You know, 21% of CEOs and politicians are psychopaths. It might even be more than that. It like behooves them to not feel things so they could go ahead by lying, cheating, and stealing. And it's all in the name of business or the greater good or whatever. And they have to be detached from life. And then we are even automated in our everyday most of the time to be attached from this. So kind of going back to different people that awake or whatever, aware or indigo or whatever you want to phrase it as, there's this really hard disconnection, this things are not processing right, and you feel like this weird thing. And I guess I want to go to Missy Nomer, because before the show we were kind of talking about this with kids, and in the environment. And I was wondering her thoughts about that. Missy, are you still there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you good.
Okay, I was actually just typing you something, so I missed your question. I'm sorry. What was the initial question?
Oh, no, just anything. I was actually talking about how this whole kind of disconnecting of being in part of the system, and if you're like empathetic, or if you're, you know, whatever label you want to say, where you're in tune with your emotions, and the environment's not conducive to that kind of like behavior. You know, you're supposed to follow the rules and not, and so forth. Because we're kind of mentioning it a little before the show.
I mean, I know that what I've experienced with schools a lot, and with, you know, working with children, is a lot of people want children to conform, and it breaks their spirit. And I think that has a lot to do with environment and everything being very like constitutionalized feeling, and it's lost. I think the world has lost touch with that connectivity. I do remember being called just the other day. Someone said, "You remind me of, have you seen that movie, The Waking Life?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen it." And she said, "There's a scene where this guy says, you know, we shouldn't just be like worker ants. We should like stop and talk to each other. And we shouldn't just be," and she says, "That's you, because when you walk down the street, you actually meet and greet everyone that you come in contact with pretty much in some way or another without ignoring them." And that's, I said, I told her that's kind of a locals thing from where I am in San Francisco. But it was weird because I didn't really know anyone, and went on this walk and ended up meeting like 4 Pisces in a row, and ended up writing down all of their phone numbers. We all became good friends. And as I was telling you, had a very serendipitous moment with this magical duck walking in, who ended up being a safety duck for this girl and her son. And it was just a very like magical day. But I think it was also because I was connecting with my actual environment in the way that I would choose to perceive it. Because for me, being in San Francisco right now is very hard visually. So I can't just look at the surface. I have to like really interact and find something. Like when I see people not looking at each other, not connecting, it's very weird to me. And I was complimented by my friend, because she said, "That's so not you. When you walk down the street, you're just not that person. It's weird." So I really do think that people have lost a lot of connectivity. And I recently was trying to pry my little cousin's phone out of her hand and explain to her, in other countries like Japan, they have screen rehab. She's 14, and her mom finally took away the phone. But it's just become horrifying for me, you know, because I've worked with kids for a long time, and we do art, and we like to do things with our hands, and there's always a strong focus on learning through play. Strong focus on behavior, but learning through play. And I don't feel like any kids now are having fun and enjoying it. It's very terrifying to be in school for a lot of kids, especially public schools right now. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I've been seeing and dealing with in my immediate surroundings. And so I'm choosing to try to connect with people and be really present, not walk down the street with my phone in my face or something, you know. And it was really nice to be able to do that and meet so many nice people in one day. It's kind of a serendipitous day, but yeah.
No, yeah, I totally had the same feeling, and it's funny because Waking Life is one of my favorite movies, and I know exactly what your friend was talking about. But this kind of goes into this thing of what's happening right now. I see, and I'm always trying to express it or trying to process it within myself. Is that ironically, we're supposedly in this age of connectivity through the internet, but it seems that we're more disconnected in a lot of ways than ever before. And personally, I don't have a smartphone, And it was a long time ago that it was kind of more of an economic thing. I was transitioning between jobs, and I wanted to get rid of all my bills, and so I really cut down on a lot of stuff. And then it was funny because then it became kind of like this ironic thing, because when I would tell somebody that I don't have a smartphone, they'd be like, "How do you live?" I'm like, "I live fine." But then later, it was always this kind of like weird thing. Like everybody would look at me like an alien, and I kind of like always like when I was in high school, I was like into punk rock and was like very kind of like purposely trying to set myself different from everybody else, even to where I was like following kind of a certain archetype or label. But now I look, and anytime I go out into the world, whether it's like riding on the bus or going to an event, eating dinner, or whatever it is, I feel like I'm this alien in this world, because I noticed that everybody unconsciously or has this habit of like looking at their phone. We could be at a live event, and people are constantly checking their phones, or we're eating, and it's like those images that you see. And there's one good image that I use where this couple is like embracing, but they're looking at their phones behind each other, and it's very strange, because also too there's immense potential and power there as well with cell phones and the internet, but we as humanity as a whole have yet to, let's say, grow up or evolve to really harness this power. And I know me and Nikki always kind of have this conversation about how eventually, like, let's say this technology is maybe this bike with training wheels, that perhaps this is we go so far out of ourselves with this communication, and we come back to our innate ability to connect with each other kind of beyond language. Whenever you have that really relationship with somebody, I used to have this with my friends when we were 20. We were a really close group. We would hang out all the time, and we would go to parties, events, everything together. We were just like a crew, and we had this saying that, that goes without saying, and we would kind of like feed off each other, and we wouldn't have to necessarily express things, but we kind of like will play off each other really well. Like we would do certain things, and like, and I was like, it's like, I knew that you were upset, so I had to go and get you. Oh yeah, that goes without saying. We'll say different things because we were so connected to each other that we could just read each other. It goes back to what I was saying about in the kitchen as well. And I think this is where I know for sure I want the Imaginarium. I know that us meeting like this and using Minds or other social networks is just a tool. It's just the menu. And the meal is the actual connecting with each other. And this experience of us exchanging things, of our attention, of developing our relationships, but also too, as we grow personally, collectively, as our small group, and we bring other people in, like we were kind of saying, that I want to give this experience to other people, and this is where we build our different versions of Imaginariums. So there's a physical place, a physical environment where it depends on each individual how they want to use it. If you need a break from everyday life and you need to go and center yourself, you go into the Imaginarium. And we're already, hopefully all of us here already do this without having a physical space. It was kind of funny when we first did the 24-hour Imaginarium. Nikki was stressing because she couldn't log into the breathing room, and her kid very intuitively told her, well, why can't you just do that right now without having the tool? The Imaginarium is always within inside us, but we forget that, and we need to prime each other and help each other whenever we get kind of lost in the digital woods or even in the physical hecticness of life. We come into the Imaginarium, and we kind of we reset, or we work to upgrade our software in a sense, so that I in my images I have the Imaginarium, and it has connect, collaborate, and create. This is like a little formula I think that will serve us well moving forward. That's why I think it's always important for us to talk, and then later as we grow to physically meet in these projects that we do. And I think this is what's so exciting about us moving forward. And it's funny because we already are connected. We have one of the famous things that I latched onto on Minds was ideas are networks. Ideas are networks. And we have these similar ideas, and we're already networked without even being aware of it. But now we're starting to get more aware of it. Like before, we were talking about the Imaginarium for the kids, and we had different pieces of that puzzle. And another phrase that I like to use is mosaic of minds, that we each have our own unique piece of the mosaic, and how we fit together creates this picture, this vision that is stronger and greater than what we could produce on our own. And I hopefully, this is kind of like the drum that I'm going to beat always. Hopefully, sometimes I need reminding, but yeah, that's basically kind of what I wanted to say. Nikki?
Well, I'd
Yeah.
like to jump in just 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting what you said, Satori. Yeah, it is true that a lot of people are, they have their nose in their smartphone all the time. And I've noticed it. I personally have a smartphone, but for very specific reasons. In the project I'm in right now, there's an app for the phone, so I'm sort of alpha testing all kinds of applications. But to come back to the subject at hand, one day we won't even need phones. When the vibrational frequency will be high enough, we won't even need technology, because we are supercomputers after all, and we'll be able to communicate with each other just by telepathy. And just like the people of Atlantis were doing, they had that ability. So we'll have the same abilities. I'm not talking tomorrow, I'm not talking next year, but in the next few decades. And it's going to be a slow process, but humanity will eventually let go of these technologies that we consider so important right now. But that's the comment I wanted to make on your statement. I yield back to someone else.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, both of you, in the sense that, as Dan has always been aware of, I've always been in kind of two minds about the technology, that in one sense that we can connect with each other so rapidly. I would never have met all of you guys had we not had this amazing technology. And for a while, I found it difficult to sort of get my head around, because I was very conflicted. Because on the one hand, I felt that the technology was compromising human consciousness evolving. But actually, as time's gone on, I see it as a very important aspect of humans evolving, because as you were saying, Dan, that the technology is like a training ground. I kind of now see that as we're at this kind of pivotal point in human evolution of consciousness where we're sort of on the brink of flipping over to what you're saying, Tech Lords, where we will not need the technology anymore. We'll just be multidimensional in the consciousness sense. So we can just connect with people irrespective of having a tool or anything that assists us in rapidly connecting with people. So, and when you look at technology, it's a mirror for the human biocomputer. You know, everything about technology is what it basically reflects what the human is. You know, and as technology evolves, we evolve. You know, and vice versa. You know, we evolve, technology evolves, and
Yeah,
we're kind of in sync in that respect.
I like the this is kind of goes into that book that I kind of writing. You know, the old saying that God created us in His image, and we created technology in our image, and so so there's like this continuum of the expression, right? We're part of the expression of the universe and the cosmos, and technology is the expression of us, but we are also part of the universe, so that technology is part of this continuum of that. I'll go back to you, Nikki.
Yeah, and yeah, so as I say, I was very conflicted for a long time, probably for years actually, because I could see that for a while, like when Facebook first came out, I was, you know, all my friends joined Facebook, and they kept saying, oh, you know, it was that classic, you know, one line when you meet people, it was like, are you on Facebook? You know, or when you first connect with somebody, it'd be like, oh, what, are you on Facebook? Can I find you on Facebook? You know, before you kind of go into any other realm. And I'd always say, well, no, I'm not on Facebook. And they'd be like, what? How can you not be on Facebook? What's wrong with you, sort of thing? And so what I'm saying is I was very resistant to it. And then eventually I succumbed and I went on Facebook. Then I went off Facebook for about 2 years. I went back on again. But the point is, I was very, just using Facebook as a, you know, example of what we're talking about. You know, technology evolving and people connecting. But I was so against it. And then I suddenly thought, well, actually, it's everything in terms of technology is completely reflects what our consciousness is doing at every moment. It took me ages to sort of acknowledge this or to become aware of it. And now, obviously, looking at it, it's so obvious that as technology, and obviously technology is consistently evolving as we evolve, I kind of see that we're completely in alignment with that the whole time. So I feel that the progression, you know, the ultimate progression or leap of consciousness is as Tech Lords was saying, we will go beyond that. So it will go back into that golden age period, like in the Atlantean times, where we won't have to use anything technological in order to communicate with people. You know, we won't need that anymore. It will just be instantaneous. It will be like an instantaneous dial-up, you know, of telepathy. And I also feel that so it will be the ultimate connection on all levels. And I also feel that we'll have other abilities, you know, where we can connect with water. You know, it's not that we would want to manipulate water or the reasons why we would want to manipulate it, but, you know, aquakinesis, I think they call it. You know, that is just being completely connected with something. You know, being able to tune into water and manipulate it, not for anything, not in a malevolence sense, but the ability to do that is to be totally connected. And obviously we'll have all the other abilities as well. And that was the other thing I wanted to just touch upon as well, is the whole issue of water and the importance of water for the elevation of consciousness. And obviously the water that we have, that most people consume, is not a good source of water, in the sense that, like us, you know, like the human Akash, as we were talking about earlier, holds memory and it records information. You know, it holds data, information, it has memory. So, you know, in that sense, I always think of water in terms of it giving us the optimum levels of nourishment, for want of a better word. It's a bit like the subconscious brain, you know, the subconscious, in terms of it being connected to the Akash, you know, each individual's DNA record holds the memories and the records, and runs programs. So a program within a human being can be from past existences, past lives, and obviously also programs we've created within the current existence. And, you know, in terms of the subconscious is like the cultivator of our reality. It's like the garden of growing what we perceive as our individual reality, that we see as an external play out, you know, what we see within our external, or what we perceive as externally to us, you know, the mirror. And water holds memory, and obviously it's been proven, you know, we can see that the impact of certain words and things that have, you know, words, music, anything that has a vibrational frequency impacts on water and also impacts on us. So, because obviously we're made of, so we're mostly water, and the planet is mostly water. So what I'm saying in terms of the subconscious and water of being connected, we can, if we can change the programs that are running in the subconscious, we change what we see as our reality. And that is kind of the true meaning of being a creator, you know, being a creator of our own individual experience. And I wanted to ask Tech Lords, because I'm not massively knowledgeable on this subject, about water and how we can restructure water. So obviously we've got our current sources of water, you know, that comes out of the tap, and we can obviously buy bottled water, but you know, how do we obtain a good, pure source of water? And what are the things that we can do to, as the term goes, restructure the water? So in a sense, restructuring the water is like pressing the reset button. It takes it back to its original pure state. And
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. There's two different ways to go about that. The first is the physical tools that exist. The most well-known company that produces these restructuring of water devices is Natural Action Technologies. They have these modules. They all, you know, they go from the handheld all the way to the the whole house unit, and even commercial use and stuff like that. But there's another way. You can talk to water. You could you can set a special intent, and if you want, you could check Dr. Emoto's work on that. There's a whole bunch of videos on YouTube on Dr. Emoto's work, and just by setting an intent, you can restructure water. So you don't really need um, uh, physical things that are built by humans to restructure water. It's easier, you know. Well, I can say that, but it's just as easy to to give a positive intent to a container of water or a glass of water. And there's been many experiments on this. So I invite you to look it up, Dr. Emoto on YouTube. You're going to find a whole bunch of videos that talk about it. So water it's the source of life. If there was no water on this planet, there would be no life whatsoever. So, and in third density, water is an essential component for life. And I'm not surprised that it records. It has a memory. It can record bad or good intentions. Even if the water is polluted, if you send an intent, a positive intent, and some love, you can change the toxicity of water to pure water. So that's basically my take on that. I yield back.
Yeah, and you can even you could just play music. You know, you could play classical music to water, which would restructure it, or you could, in terms of like some of these devices that you can purchase to restructure water, and like you were saying, Tackles, you don't necessarily have to do that to reset the water or to remove the toxicity from water. But in terms of a physical action, you could pour the water into a vessel and you could stir it one way. So you, in a sense, you stir it up and create a whirlpool. So if you were looking through a glass as you're doing this, say you've got like a wooden spoon, you're spinning it round and you start to see this whirlpool occurring or being created. And then you can go in the opposite direction. That can kind of restructure the water in the physical sense, but like you were saying, you can send an intent of love, or you can, you know, some people might think it sounds a bit mad, but you can talk to it, you can play music, because obviously, like everything, it has a vibratory nature to it, so you can change the vibration by what's the word, in impacting some kind of positive vibration onto it. You know, you are imprinting, that's the word I'm looking for, you imprint a positive vibration onto that water, and then obviously it changes it back to its purer form. And obviously it's all about vibration, so obviously converting something into a positive vibration then impacts on you in a positive vibratory way. So, and it's the same as words. You know, if you say something negative to somebody, that imprints on that person in a negative way. You can't, and it's not something you can reverse. Once you said those words, you have imprinted that negative vibration. You've transferred that negative vibration onto something, and it's obviously has an impact. So obviously that is the positive element of consuming water that is vibrating at a higher, more positive, loving way. And it's obviously the same with all foods or any living organism that has a genome. If the genome and the DNA vibration is positive by nature, then if you then imbibe or consume that food or liquid whatever the vibration of that food or liquid is at the time is going to impact you in the same way. It's going to have an effect on you. So obviously foods and the things that we consume put into our biocomputer, or the biological part of the human, is going to have a positive effect or a negative effect. So but like I said, this is something that we could probably talk about in another show and go much deeper, because you know, like I was saying about the star seeds and light workers, and different beings have different lineages and different DNA makeup, then some may have, or to some extent, be not impacted as much by what they consume, depending on what their DNA is when they come in. So, but as I say, that's a kind of another element that we could go into much deeper. Hey, I'll hand over to Kevin. Have you got something that you would like to add to that?
So I don't know if you guys know who Dr. William H. Tiller is, but he's very much in tune with intention and consciousness and the thought of action in detection. And he performed experiments where they identified the specific pH of water, and regular participants focused on changing the pH of the water itself. And they successfully, within the lab, changed the pH by 1 full point. And if you know how much that is, that's pretty intense amount, simply by focusing on adjusting the pH from the number it was tested at to the number in their mind, and focusing on sending their conscious energy to the water. Being that it was conducted in the lab, they felt that maybe there could be some crossover or tainting effect, and therefore conducted the experiment from his workers there in California, and on the other side of the world conducted the same experiment and had the same result. And this was a focused intent experiment that took place over, I believe it took, I've got the book here, I'd have to look it up, but I believe it was within 1 day or 2 days that they were able actually to change the pH at any distance through the focused energy of the conscious agent. And I am of the ilk to say that a person becomes the water, as to say, where you live, as you bathe, drink the water. I only drink water. The source that it's drawn from, you become a part of that as your physical identity. And the water's health has a lot to do with your health, and the water's path has a lot to do with your feelings and your methodology of life. And I found it kind of curious. I was sitting here listening to Tech Lords and thinking about some sales data that came out from Coca-Cola this year, that water overtook all of their drink portfolios for net sales at like $24 billion this year for the first time ever. It was actually higher than the trademark beverage that they had built their name upon. And I think that kind of must speak. Of course, it's an embedded psychological training to for active, healthy people to do that. But at the same time, it must have something to do with the health of the treated water in the higher density population centers and their general feeling. And I thought that it just struck me like, wow, when we're talking about intention and water, what an interesting opportunity for for another sort of manipulative mechanism for a corporation to be like the main purveyor of the source of your life. And not to be conspiracy oriented, but wondering, oh, what kind of music are they playing in the factory? You know?
Yeah, that's funny. We're already at an hour and a half, so I think to kind of start wrapping up things. So I mean, it is very interesting about we're kind of coming to this about your attention and how that gets embedded. And it's probably via water because, you know, most living things are what, 70% water or whatever it is. I forgot what the percentage is, but mostly water. And so it's funny how, or not funny, but it's we forget. I just talking generally as humans in this kind of construct of our system that we all kind of grow up in, that we forget these kind of like intuitive things, but we have still the remnants of that through this ancient wisdom. You know, it's probably no mistake that, you know, even in the Judeo-Christian what do you call it, rituals, baptism by water. Water has always been about purity or cleansing. And so we have that program, that information embedded within, you know, the archetypes or collective unconscious. And lastly, I kind of want to go back to DNA and the cosmic serpent. And so it seems that the shamans have taken their consciousness down to the molecular level, watched DNA replicating itself. They have direct access to the reality of the molecular biology and have done so for thousands of years. Western science is only starting to catch up. There are parallels between the serpent myths and DNA. Each human cell contains DNA about 2 meters long, so there's about 125 billion miles of DNA in your body, enough to wrap around the world 5 million times. One thread of DNA is tiny, about 120 times narrower than the smallest wavelength of visible light. So DNA is massive and tiny at the same time, like the mythical serpents. DNA is also connected with water. All cells contain salt water, which helps the DNA twist into the double helix shape. It does this by protecting itself because of the 4 bases, A, G, C, and T, are insoluble in water, so they twist up inside the cell to stay out of touch with the water molecules. DNA has maintained its basic structure for billions of years, despite the constant copying and changing of itself. The serpent too creates a transforming itself, and yet it always stays the same. To copy itself, and DNA molecules uncoils and unzips so it can make an identical copy like twins. And so that's kind of what I want to leave, the last of what I want to express, and I'll kick it back to Nikki.
Yeah, I think that for me, it kind of goes into yet another realm of, like, you know, with the DNA, there is 2 kind of schools of thought, in a sense, 2 schools of consciousness. I kind of see this split or divide of consciousness, where you kind of have 2 parallel realities of, you know, one collective consciousness who are at a certain level, and then another level of collective consciousness, and the 2 groups are kind of unaware of each other. So there's always this kind of thing with the parallel realities where the DNA is, you know, one is evolving and one is kind of staying, not necessarily not evolving, but it's kind of not moving as fast as the other one. And it's kind of like, it goes back to the parallels with technology and human consciousness evolving. You know, you have different levels of technology and different degrees of technology, where, you know, you get like the super fast broadband or something, you know, like, and then you get like the slightly slower versions. And so again, it's kind of, everything's parallel. The human and the technology is parallel, and that's how I kind of see the whole DNA program, records and things, inputs and outputs and all the rest of it. It's kind of the, to sum up, we have, and I know we're kind of wrapping up, but just something that Kevin said earlier as well, it made me think of how you have collective consciousness or collective unconsciousness, where you often go to a place, because yeah, I think Kevin, you were saying about the water and certain environments, and the water carries a different vibration, so then that kind of imprints on the people or the collective of the people that live there. And I've found in life that you go to places and you have almost like a collective of consciousness, where there are people living in an environment, and they all kind of have the same mentality, not exactly the same, they all kind of have an individual element to them, but you know, you can go to one place and everybody has a similar sort of mentality and outlook, and you can literally go like a mile down the road, it's, you know, there's literally not a very massive distance between the two places, and you seem to have a collective of consciousness or mentality that is different from the other place, but yet it's all the same. So there's definitely some kind of, you know, vibratory field or frequencies where people all resonate, or they all go to the same place, they're all magnetized towards the same place, and they all kind of come together, so there's a connection. So I don't know if that's me really wrapping anything up. I'm probably thinking of a new subject, but that
I
just
have a
came to mind.
question. I have a question for you guys. Do you, Satori, or anyone remember, maybe Kevin or anyone, that in the sound, or actually the harmonic resonance group, the clip I posted with the guy that talks about the how cutting out junk DNA is like cancer jumping, because we are actually, even if you think starting based on the heart song alone, if you were to think the DNA of the DNA strand as being a longer song, and that the way there were, I posted even screen caps so you could see my favorite part of the blob with like little sound waves upon sound waves upon sound waves, which it was kind of like cute to see this little visual, and I almost wanted to make it into a comic strip because it's like where these waves of vibration and sound, and it's just, he was saying to cut out what other people are calling junk DNA is actually cancer jumping, and actually needed for the larger strand. It's really, really a great clip, and the visuals are a lot of the screen caps that I posted, like the heart song one. It's a really great one, and I think it's really interesting because it touches on a lot of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah. It's actually funny because one of the things that you posted in the harmonic resonance group is something I keep in my rotation to always like remind. So like but yeah, Kevin, actually, let's wrap up your thoughts, and then we could end the show, and then we could just talk after. But Kevin.
Well, I firmly believe, as we've sort of discussed here tonight, that when we made the internet, scientists wanted to communicate information about tests over distances quickly, was really the fundamental point. So we needed to take nodes of knowledge and connect them. And I think to where we would have been had Nikola Tesla been given the chance to fulfill his vision, and where our DNA might have gone today had we not been stagnated by a sort of imposed control mechanism to keep us from just evolving naturally. I think we're at that point in human history where there's nothing more to be thrown at us that allows us to be distracted from what's been sort of building within us over a great deal of time. And our DNA reacts to the fact that interconnectedness brings a subliminal information set that us being here together and sharing our love and our general understandings of being implants things in us that we won't necessarily be aware of until later, when we'll have aha moments and realize there were parts of things we've been talking about, which fundamentally to me is activating our DNA and raising our vibrations. The water, I think, is the physical intermediary of consciousness. Water is a distant time traveler from another space and time. It came to our planet as a gift from another source. It's so much older than our planet. And it has given us everything that has opened the door to perception. Every unique facet and follicle of every hair of, our human condition, every tree, every shrub, every living state of consciousness in its beauty. And as we're here on the internet, we're reconnecting all these pieces very rapidly at godlike speed. And it's exciting in the Imaginarium to open these doors and maybe give people curiosities towards some of these topics and where we're going, and the wide-eyed innocence of a child. Thank you.
Thanks for everyone listening. This is another Infinite Imaginarium. For those who haven't added us on Minds, add us, Infinite Imaginarium. We also have a Proton Mail. It's Infinite Imaginarium at Proton Mail. We want people to collaborate and co-create the Imaginarium and also writing the new story for humanity. Thank you. Bye.